Over the past weekend, it was announced that Joe Biden will be the next president of the United States, the 46th president, as of January, assuming nothing crazy happens with the voting and all the lawsuits, etc. So what does that mean for the housing market in 2021? Well, before we dive into that, I want to take a minute and talk about the present housing market. Where are we with regards to supply and demand, forbearances, foreclosures? And then we'll talk about Joe Biden's plan, some things that he brought up while he was out campaigning to be president that could affect the housing market in 2021. And then my predictions on what the 2021 housing market will look like with a new president. My name is Jeb Smith. I'm a real estate broker here in Southern California. And in today's video, we're going to dive into the present housing market as well as what the future housing market could look like, and one of the potential downfalls that could change the dynamic of the housing market if it's implemented as Joe Biden becomes the next president of the United States. So do me a favor, as you're watching this video, if you find the information helpful, useful at all, give me a thumbs up. And I encourage you to leave me comments on your thoughts. This is one of those topics that's, it's very hard to touch on exactly what's going to happen because we don't have all of the information at this time. I'm just putting out what I think might happen based on what's happening right now. And as a realtor with boots on the ground, helping buyers, helping sellers navigate the real estate process. So let's start today's video by talking about the present housing market. What got us to where we are today? Well, over the last few years, we've seen a decline in available homes for sale inventory. And as we came into 2020, we already had a low supply of homes, but we were on track to have a gangbuster real estate market. And then COVID hit in early March and the market kind of went sideways. Inventory picked up, buyer demand dropped, and there wasn't a lot happening. But as we transitioned out of April into May, the housing market started to pick up. Interest rates went down, which helped stimulate buyer demand, and we started to see inventory come on the market. But the problem was we saw buyer demand rise at a larger pace than we did inventory, which added to the housing shortage, the available homes for sale, the inventory that everyone keeps talking about. So what we've had over the last couple of months is a huge run in buyer demand, stimulated largely by low interest rates and low inventory, and not a lot of homes coming to the market. But last month we saw pending home sales drop a little bit, and in my last video I mentioned that that's likely going to be the case through the end of the year. But how does that transition into 2021? Well, in 2021, you're likely going to see a lot of what you're seeing right now. You're going to see buyer demand stay where it is and potentially pick up based on one of the things we're going to discuss in a moment. But you're going to see interest rates likely stay the same, potentially even going lower. If you're watching this at all, you've seen that interest rates continually keep hitting record lows. And this might continue until we reach some sort of bottom in interest rates, at which point interest rates might move sideways to up a little bit. But with interest rates being low, inventory being low, it's going to stimulate buyer demand, which means that you're going to have a lot of buyers bidding on the same properties, causing home prices to continue moving sideways to up, unless something happens with inventory. Well, as of right now, we have forbearances that are outstanding. We have evictions that are outstanding with moratoriums in most part of the country until the end of December. So the one thing that could change the housing market outside of, changes that potentially Biden could implement are changes in the inventory or the interest rates. And we know that interest rates are going to stay low through the end of 2023 based on the statement put out by the Fed in the last Fed funds meeting. So we know interest rates are going to be low. So the only thing that could really change housing would be some huge supply of inventory coming to the market at one time. Well, what could cause that? Well, a lot of people out there are predicting, when the eviction and foreclosure moratorium is up, that all of these properties are going to flood the market at one time. As I've mentioned in other videos where I discuss this, That's going to be, difficult in my eyes for all of these properties to come to the market at one time. For one, you have different laws in different states based on how they handle evictions and foreclosures. So in the state of California, which is a very, very tenant-friendly state, it's likely going to take months to evict people just in tenant-occupied properties. And foreclosures, based on my experience with foreclosures, sometimes it takes years to go through the foreclosure process. That doesn't mean you're not going to have some coming to the market. It means that you're not going to have some huge supply at one time. So as you have properties trickle to the market with already low supply, that trickle to the market is going to create more supply. But because of interest rates being low, buyer demand is likely going to stay where it is. So you're likely going to have buyers jump into those properties and taking that supply off the market. But here comes Joe Biden's plan. So in Joe Biden's campaign, he mentioned a potential first-time homebuyer tax credit up to $15,000. Now, we're unsure of exactly how that might be implemented, or you might get the refund, or how the money might be applied. There's no certainty on that at the moment, and there's actually no certainty that this will actually happen. But assuming it does happen, what that's going to do is just stimulate more potential buyer demand. So once you give buyers that are already interested in entering the market and potentially already looking in the market, not able to find a property, more incentive to buy a home with interest rates low, inventory low, buyer demand is going to surge, which means that we'll likely see a market in 2021 look a lot like 2020. In my eyes, that tax credit that Biden's talking about could end up adversely affecting home buyers because it's going to create more competition than is already out there. And if you're a buyer in this market, you know the competition that I'm talking about. Competition where you're putting in multiple offers and likely getting outbid on multiple properties. So now you create this incentive, which is going to create more potential home buyers. Inventory is likely going to go up, if at all, by very little. So you're going to have more buyers in the market competing against less inventory. That, to me, creates a very strong housing market. So 2021, in my eyes, is going to look a lot like 2020. Unless President-elect Biden does something where he locks down the country again because of COVID spreading and what have you. I know in the past there's been talks of a potential lockdown based on him becoming president, and honestly, I'm unsure whether or not that would be something that he would implement. Now, if there was another lockdown where people couldn't go to work, that could create, a disaster, right? It could adversely affect the market. People could get very weary of what's going on, in addition to the weirdness that they already have. And that could be a potential problem. Now, I'm hopeful that that doesn't happen. And I honestly believe, as I've mentioned in several videos, that I don't think the foreclosure and evictions are going to be a huge problem for our market. I do think they'll come to the market, but at the same time, I do believe there's a lot of measures in place to help homeowners who fell behind on payments or could be in a position where they could end up in some sort of foreclosure situation. So that's my take on the market and where we're headed for 2021. Do me a favor though, if you have questions, you have comments, leave them below. As I get more information on the housing market, I'll continue to update you. I appreciate you taking the time to watch. I appreciate your support. We'll see you again soon. Have an awesome day. Bye-bye.